I watched him rehearse my presentation in the conference room for 3 hours straight. Every slide I'd created, every insight I'd discovered during months of sleepless nights, every visualization that had taken me weeks to perfect. He was standing there, under the harsh fluorescent lights, polishing my work, preparing to deliver it to the executive board as his own breakthrough idea. And I let him, because I knew something he didn't. The data he was about to present had a fatal flaw buried so deep, he'd never find it in time. And when the board tore him apart in front of the entire company, when his career imploded in spectacular fashion, when everything he'd stolen from me became the very weapon that destroyed him, I would be standing in the back of that boardroom, watching every single second of his downfall. My hands would be clean, my conscience clear, because I wouldn't have to lie to destroy him. I'd just have to tell the truth at exactly the right moment. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this really began. My name is Nathan Cole, and I've been working at TechVault Solutions for 4 years. I was a senior data analyst in the strategy division, not the sexiest title, but I was good at what I did. Really good. The kind of good where executives would quietly pull me into their offices and ask me to take a look at something because they trusted my insights more than their own directors. I was 31 years old, still renting a 1-bedroom apartment with water-stained ceiling tiles and a bathroom door that didn't quite close. My student loan balance had more digits than my bank account. Every Sunday night, I'd cook bulk batches of pasta and frozen vegetables, dividing them into containers that would be my lunch and dinner for the week. My college Honda had 187,000 miles on it, and I taught myself to ignore sounds that cars probably shouldn't make. I wasn't climbing the corporate ladder fast, but I told myself that quality work would eventually speak for itself. That was my first mistake, believing that hard work mattered more than politics. Webb was my manager. 42, charismatic in that corporate politician way, always wearing tailored suits in a shade of charcoal that probably had some pretentious name like Midnight Smoke. He wore cologne that cost more than my weekly grocery budget, one of those woody, expensive scents that announced his presence before he entered a room. He had this ability to walk into any meeting and make himself seem like the most important person there, laughing at the right jokes, name-dropping the right connections, never actually doing much work but always taking credit when things went well. And when things went wrong, he was a master at redirecting blame. I should have seen the signs earlier. The way he'd casually ask about my projects during our one-on-ones, taking detailed notes while nodding encouragingly, his Mont Blanc pen scratching across his leather notebook. The way he'd schedule team strategy sessions, where I'd present my analysis, and then 2 weeks later, he'd present remarkably similar conclusions to senior leadership, without mentioning my name. But I was naive. I thought he was just doing his job as a manager, synthesizing team input. I had no idea he was systematically stealing every valuable idea I produced and repackaging it as his own genius. It started in March. Our CEO, Richard Halloway, sent out a company-wide challenge: find new revenue streams. TechVault's core business, enterprise cloud storage, was plateauing. We needed innovation and we needed it fast. Whoever could identify and validate a new market opportunity would be fast-tracked for promotion and receive a $50,000 innovation bonus. $50,000. That was 2 years of my student loan payments. That was a down payment on a real apartment. That was everything. For 3 months, I worked like my life depended on it, because in a way, it did. I came in at 6 a.m., when the office was still dark and silent except for the hum of the servers in the back room. I stayed until midnight, the cleaning crew working around me, emptying trash cans while I filled spreadsheets. I analyzed 15 different market sectors, conducted hundreds of hours of research, interviewed industry experts on my personal time, and built predictive models that would make a PhD statistician weep with joy. My eyes burned from screen time. My back ached from sitting. I stopped seeing my friends. Stopped calling my mother back. My entire existence narrowed to this one project. And I found it. The healthcare compliance market. Specifically, helping mid-sized medical practices navigate the absolute nightmare of data privacy regulations. It was a $3.2 billion opportunity that nobody in our company had even considered because we'd always focused on huge enterprise clients. But the beauty of it? These medical practices were desperate for simple, affordable solutions. They were being hammered with fines for HIPAA violations, drowning in complex requirements, and our existing technology could be adapted to solve their problems with minimal development costs. High margin, scalable, defensible market position. It was perfect. I built a 127-slide presentation documenting everything. Market size, competitive analysis, revenue projections, implementation roadmap, customer persona research. I had recorded interviews with 12 medical practice managers who'd agreed to be beta customers. I had mock-ups. I had financial models stress-tested against 3 different economic scenarios. I had everything. And I made my second mistake. I showed it to Marcus first. I scheduled a meeting with him in early June, walking into his corner office with my laptop and a printed copy of the presentation bound in a professional folder. His office smelled like that expensive cologne and fresh coffee. He had a window view of the city skyline. I had a cubicle view of the printer. For 90 minutes, I walked him through the entire presentation. I watched his eyes light up as I showed him the revenue projections. I saw him lean forward when I played clips from the customer interviews. He asked penetrating questions about implementation costs, competitive threats, scalability challenges. He was engaged. More engaged than I'd ever seen him. When I finished, he stood up and shook my hand, his grip firm and warm. "Nathan, this is incredible. This is exactly what Richard is looking for. This is promotion-level work." My heart soared. I could feel my life changing in that moment. "Let me set up a meeting with Richard for you," he continued. "I've got his ear. I can make sure this gets the attention it deserves. Just send me your complete presentation file so I can review the details and help you polish the pitch." I trusted him. I sent him my complete presentation file that same afternoon, along with all my supporting research documents. Every single file. Every interview recording. Every spreadsheet. Every footnote. I gave him everything he needed to erase me from my own work. The following week came and went. No update from Marcus. No meeting scheduled with Richard. I sent him a polite follow-up email. "Hi Marcus, just checking in on timing for the executive presentation. Happy to do any additional prep work needed." He responded 6 hours later with a breezy, "Still working on timing. Want to make sure we position this perfectly. We'll loop you in soon." 2 weeks later, nothing. 3 weeks, nothing. My stomach started knotting every time I checked my email. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the water stain on my ceiling that looked like a map of somewhere I'd never be able to afford to visit, wondering if I'd made a mistake. Wondering if my project wasn't as good as I thought. Wondering if Marcus had found flaws I'd missed. Then, for weeks after I'd given him my presentation, I got a calendar invite that made my blood run cold. All-hands company meeting, Thursday 2 p.m. Special announcement from executive leadership. I had a bad feeling. The kind of feeling you get right before something breaks that can't be fixed. Thursday arrived. The entire company, about 340 employees, gathered in the main auditorium. I sat in the back row, my hands clammy, my heart hammering against my ribs. Richard Halloway walked onto the stage with his typical commanding presence, and standing beside him, grinning like he'd just won the lottery, was Marcus Webb. He was wearing a new suit, navy blue this time, probably bought specially for this moment. "I want to thank everyone for your dedication during our strategic planning process," Richard began. "I challenged this company to think differently, to find our next big opportunity. And I'm thrilled to announce that Marcus Webb, from our strategy division, has done exactly that." The screen behind them lit up. My slides. My research. My graphics. My customer interview quotes. My financial models. My work. Single. With one difference, Marcus's name on every page where mine should have been. The slide footer read, "Prepared by Marcus Webb, Strategy Division." Not Marcus Webb and Team. Not Strategy Division Analysis. Marcus Webb. Marcus has identified a revolutionary opportunity in the healthcare compliance market, Richard continued, while Marcus stood there nodding humbly, his hand over his heart like he was accepting an Oscar. His analysis is brilliant, comprehensive, and exactly the kind of innovative thinking that represents our company values. The room erupted in applause. I sat there, my fingernails digging into the fabric armrests so hard I thought I might tear through to the foam underneath. The woman next to me, someone from accounting I barely knew, leaned over and whispered, "Wow, Marcus is so smart. You're lucky to work for him." Marcus spent 45 minutes presenting my work. He answered questions with my insights, delivered with his trademark confidence. He referenced conversations with industry experts that I had conducted, describing details he could only know because he'd listened to my interview recordings. One medical practice manager told me, he said, reading from my notes, that she lies awake at night worrying about compliance violations. She said she'd pay almost anything for peace of mind. I'd cried when that woman told me that story. She'd been so vulnerable, so grateful that someone was finally trying to help people like her. And Marcus was using her pain to steal my future. At the end, Richard announced that Marcus was being promoted to VP of Strategic Innovation, with a $50,000 innovation bonus. The promotion I'd been promised. The bonus I'd earned. Given to the man who'd stolen everything from me. As everyone filed out of the auditorium, Marcus caught my eye across the room. For just a second, his mask slipped. He gave me this tiny, almost imperceptible smirk, the look of a predator who just successfully completed a hunt. "You're too weak to stop me," that look said. "You'll never be more than what you are." That night, I sat in my apartment in the dark. I hadn't turned on the lights. I just sat there on my thrift store couch, staring at nothing, feeling something cold and sharp settling in my chest. I considered every option. Going to HR, but I developed everything on my work computer, where any manager had access. Going directly to Richard, but Marcus was charismatic and now had the CEO's complete trust, while I was just a mid-level analyst. Exposing Marcus in an all-company email, but I'd look like a bitter, jealous subordinate. Every path led to my destruction, not his. I pulled up my files on my personal laptop, the backup copies I'd made out of habit. I opened the presentation, scrolling through slides that should have changed my life. And that's when I saw it. A file I'd created in late May, just before my meeting with Marcus. A file titled Healthcare Compliance, Regulatory Risk Analysis Draft. I'd been doing deep research into government regulations, reading through hundreds of pages of dense legal documents that most people would never bother with. And I'd found something. A regulatory change buried in a 400-page government document, scheduled to take effect in October. This regulation would fundamentally alter how medical practices could handle patient data, making about 40% of my proposed solution completely obsolete. I discovered it during my research, but I'd been waiting to validate my findings before incorporating them into the main presentation. I'd wanted to develop solutions to the regulatory challenges, to show that I'd thought of everything. So I'd created a separate analysis file, meticulously documented, timestamped May 27th, showing exactly how this regulatory change would impact any product in this market. But I'd never shown this file to Marcus. He'd stolen my presentation before I could update it with my regulatory findings. Which meant the strategy he'd just presented to the board, the strategy he'd been promoted for, the strategy the company was about to invest millions of dollars implementing, was built on a foundation that was about to crumble. I sat up straight. My hands stopped shaking. I could go to the board right now. I could show them the regulatory flaw. I could expose Marcus immediately and maybe get some vindication. But where was the poetry in that? There was a better way. I would let Marcus run with my stolen project. Let him bask in his promotion. Let him start implementation. Let him commit the company's resources and reputation to a strategy that I knew was broken. And when the regulatory change hit, when the entire project threatened to collapse, when the board demanded answers about how this critical risk was missed, that's when I would reveal my May 27th analysis. Proof that I'd identified this risk months ago, during my original research, the research that Marcus had claimed as his own. The question wouldn't be, why didn't anyone catch this? The question would be, why didn't Marcus catch this when he did his comprehensive research? And he'd have no good answer. Because he never did the research. He stole mine. And stolen goods sometimes come with hidden defects. I didn't need to lie. I didn't need to fabricate evidence. I didn't need to become like him. I just needed to be patient. And when the moment came, I'd simply tell the truth. Sometimes the most devastating weapon isn't a sword. It's a document with a timestamp. The Friday after his promotion, I walked into Marcus's new corner office with a smile on my face. The same office where I'd handed him my future 4 weeks earlier. Marcus, congratulations on the promotion. The healthcare compliance strategy is brilliant. He looked surprised, then relaxed into his trademark confident grin. His new nameplate gleamed on his desk, Marcus Webb, VP of Strategic Innovation. Thanks, Nathan. I appreciate that. And listen, I'm going to need strong analytical support as we roll this out. I'd like you to be the lead analyst on the implementation team. Of course he did. He needed me to do the actual work while he took credit. I'd be honored, I said, every word tasting like ashes in my mouth. He stood and shook my hand. I felt that expensive cologne wash over me, a scent I would learn to associate with betrayal. I knew I could count on you, Nathan. You're a team player. A team player. That's what people call you when they need you to accept being used. Over the next 3 months, I became Marcus's most dedicated employee. I worked on implementation planning. I helped him prepare board updates. I built out project timelines. I coordinated with the product development team. Every task he gave me, I executed flawlessly. Every meeting he led, I attended and took detailed notes. I watched him present his strategy to the board every month, watching him receive praise and recognition, watching his reputation grow as the company's innovation savior. He bought a Tesla, moved into a downtown loft, started dating a woman from marketing who thought he was brilliant. And I waited. I documented everything. Every decision Marcus made. Every time he dismissed concerns from other team members. Every instance where he rushed timelines to impress the board. I kept meticulous records, all time-stamped, all saved in my encrypted personal cloud. In late August, a product manager named Jennifer pulled me aside after a planning meeting. Her face was tight with worry. Nathan, I'm worried about the October timeline, she said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. My team has been researching the regulatory landscape, and we found some concerning language in a recent government document about data handling requirements. It might impact our entire technical architecture. She'd found it. The regulatory change. Someone else had finally seen what I'd seen 3 months ago. Have you raised this with Marcus? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Tried. Yesterday. He cut me off halfway through my explanation. Said we're too far along to worry about hypothetical regulatory scenarios. Said I was being paranoid and that I should focus on execution instead of finding problems. She looked genuinely distressed. But Nathan, this isn't hypothetical. The regulation is real. If we launch with our current design and this takes effect, our customers could face massive fines. I put my hand on her shoulder, gave her a sympathetic look. Marcus is under a lot of pressure from the board. I'm sure he's considered the regulatory landscape. He did months of research on this market. Months of research I did, I thought. Research that he never actually read. Maybe bring it up again in next week's status meeting? I suggested. Frame it as a risk mitigation discussion. Sometimes these concerns land better in a group setting. She nodded, looking slightly relieved that someone was taking her seriously. Will you back me up if I raise it again? Of course, I said. We're all on the same team. She thanked me and walked away. I watched her go, feeling a tiny flicker of something that might have been guilt. But then I remembered Marcus's smirk in that auditorium. I remembered the way my name had been erased from my own work. I remembered lying awake at night, my student loans crushing me, while he bought a Tesla with money he'd stolen from me. The guilt flickered and died. September 28th, 2 days before the regulatory change took effect. The government released supplemental guidance that made the impact crystal clear. No ambiguity. No room for interpretation. Medical practices would face severe penalties for using data management systems that didn't comply with the new standards. Our product, as currently designed, would make our customers vulnerable to hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. We would be selling them liability instead of protection. The news hit the healthcare tech industry like a bomb. Our competitors immediately halted their product launches. Industry publications ran panicked articles about the October compliance crisis. LinkedIn was flooded with posts from healthcare lawyers warning practices about the risks. And TechVault had already signed contracts with 23 medical practices, promising them a solution that would protect them from compliance violations. We'd sold them safety. We were about to deliver danger. I was in my cubicle when the news broke, watching the industry meltdown unfold across my screen. My phone started buzzing with messages from team members who were panicking. Marcus's office door stayed closed all morning. Through the frosted glass, I could see him pacing back and forth, his phone pressed to his ear. At 2 p.m., my calendar pinged. Emergency executive meeting. 3 p.m. All senior staff and project leads required. I saved my work, closed my laptop, and walked to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror, at the dark circles under my eyes from 3 months of pretending to respect a man who'd destroyed me, at the cheap shirt I was wearing because I couldn't afford Marcus's wardrobe. I splashed cold water on my face, straightened my collar, and I went to the meeting that would end Marcus Webb's career. The executive boardroom was packed. Richard Halloway sat at the head of the table, his face carved from granite. The board members sat along both sides, their expressions ranging from concerned to furious. Marcus sat 3 seats from Richard, his expensive suit jacket off, his tie loosened, sweat visible on his forehead despite the aggressive air conditioning. I took a seat in the back row, where the junior staff and supporting team members sat. Close enough to see everything. Far enough away to seem insignificant. Richard didn't waste time on pleasantries. Marcus, this isn't a minor issue. We have signed contracts. We have beta customers who trusted us based on your assurances. How did we miss this regulatory change? Marcus's voice came out strained, missing all its usual confidence. The final guidance only became clear in the last few days. The core regulation was buried in technical language. Nobody in the industry saw this coming. That's not true, a voice said. My voice. Every head in the room turned toward me. Marcus's face went from sweaty to bloodless in an instant. Richard's eyes found me in the back row. I'm sorry, what did you say? I stood up slowly, pulling out my tablet. My hands were steady. My voice was calm. I said that's not accurate, sir. The core regulatory language has been publicly available since late May. It was in a 400-page government document, buried in Section 47, subsection D. I discovered it during the market research phase, before the strategy was presented to the board. I walked forward, connecting my tablet to the main screen. My file appeared, projected 10 feet tall for everyone to see. Healthcare Compliance, Regulatory Risk Analysis, Draft. Created, May 27, 8:43 p.m. Last modified, May 28, 11:15 p.m. I documented my findings and the projected impact on any healthcare compliance product entering this market, I continued, pulling up page after page of analysis. The regulation requires specific data handling architectures that weren't part of the initial product design. I estimated it would add 6 months to development time and increase costs by approximately 40%. The room was dead silent except for the hum of the projector. I flagged this as a critical concern that needed to be addressed before moving forward with implementation. Richard's voice was ice. Marcus, did Nathan share this analysis with you? Marcus opened and closed his mouth. His eyes darted between me and Richard, calculating. Whatever he said next would determine whether he'd be fired or destroyed. If he said yes, he'd ignored a critical risk that could bankrupt beta customers. If he said no, the next question would be why his comprehensive research had missed something his junior analyst had found. There was no good answer because there was no good truth. Marcus started, then stopped. swallowed hard. The research phase involved a lot of data. There were many preliminary analyses that needed further validation before. Yes or no? Richard cut him off. Did Nathan present you with this regulatory analysis before you brought the healthcare strategy to the board? Marcus's career hung in the balance of a single word. There was discussion of various regulatory scenarios, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. But the data was preliminary, and I assessed that the risk was manageable during implementation phase. It was the worst possible answer. Not a yes. Not a no. Just corporate weasel language that everyone in the room recognized as an admission of guilt. Jennifer, Richard said, not taking his eyes off Marcus, you raised concerns about regulatory issues last month. Is that correct? Jennifer, sitting near the front, nodded nervously. Yes, sir. I found the same regulatory language and brought it to Marcus in late August. He told me we were too far committed to change course. He said I was. She hesitated, then continued. He said I was being paranoid and should focus on execution instead of looking for problems. One of the board members, a woman named Patricia who'd made her career in tech law, leaned forward. Let me understand this timeline. Nathan discovered this regulatory risk in May, before the strategy was even presented. Jennifer rediscovered it in August and was dismissed. The regulation took effect this week. And we have 23 signed contracts with medical practices who we've promised regulatory protection. That's correct, Richard said. Patricia looked at Marcus with undisguised contempt. So not only did we miss a critical regulatory risk, but we dismissed multiple warnings from our own team members. And we're now potentially liable for our customers' compliance violations if they're fined while using our product. Our legal team is analyzing the liability exposure now, Richard said. Initial estimates suggest we could be facing between $1.80 and $2.3 million in breach of contract penalties if we can't deliver a compliant solution. The number hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Richard turned back to Marcus. You presented this strategy as fully researched and ready for implementation. You accepted a promotion and a $50,000 bonus for this innovative work. You dismissed concerns from multiple team members because you were, what? Too proud? Too committed? Too confident in research you apparently never actually did? Marcus said nothing. His face had gone from white to gray. He looked like a man watching his life collapse in real time. Show me the original research files, Richard said suddenly. The raw data, the interview notes, the early analysis drafts. I want to see the work that went into this strategy. It was a trap and Marcus knew it. If he showed his files, the metadata would reveal that they were all copied from my original work. Dates, authors, edit histories, it would all point back to me. The files were reorganized during the presentation development process, Marcus stammered. The core research is distributed across multiple team members' work. Nathan, Richard interrupted, looking at me. Do you have your original research files? Yes, sir. All of them. With full metadata intact. Email them to me. Now. I pulled out my phone and forwarded everything to Richard. Months of my work, all time-stamped, all clearly showing that I'd created them. Richard's phone buzzed. He opened his email, scrolled through the files. His jaw tightened with each one. Marcus, in your presentation to the board, you showed customer interview clips. Who conducted those interviews? Marcus was sweating through his shirt now. The strategy team conducted extensive customer research. Conducted interviews. I conducted them, I said quietly. All 12 of them. Between April and May. I have the full recordings with timestamps in my personal archive. Richard pulled up one of my files on his phone, compared it to something on his laptop. His expression darkened further. Marcus, I'm looking at a slide from your presentation. A quote from a medical practice manager about lying awake at night worrying about compliance. This quote appears, word for word, in Nathan's customer interview transcript from April 23rd. An interview that, according to the metadata, Nathan conducted and Nathan transcribed. The board members were now whispering among themselves, the sound like wasps buzzing around carrion. How many of the 127 slides in your presentation did you personally create? Richard asked. Marcus didn't answer. How many of the customer interviews did you personally conduct? Silence. How much of the analysis did you personally perform? Marcus's voice came out as a broken whisper. I supervised the research process. As a manager, I synthesized team input. You stole your analyst's work, Richard said flatly. You put your name on it. You presented it as your own breakthrough thinking. You accepted a promotion and a $50,000 bonus for work you didn't do. And because you never actually understood the research you stole, you missed critical flaws that are now going to cost this company millions. Richard stood up. The meeting was over. Marcus, you're suspended without pay, effective immediately. Clear your office by end of day. HR will be in touch regarding termination procedures. Marcus looked at me one last time. The hatred in his eyes was pure and absolute. He knew. He knew I'd orchestrated this somehow, even if he couldn't prove exactly how. But there was nothing he could say. Nothing he could do. The truth had destroyed him more completely than any lie ever could. He left the boardroom without another word, his expensive shoes clicking against the floor with the sound of a career dying. Over the next 3 weeks, the company hired an external firm to investigate what had gone wrong. They interviewed everyone involved in the project. They reviewed all documentation, all meeting notes, all email chains, all file metadata. And what they found was a pattern of theft stretching back years. Marcus had been taking credit for his team's work systematically. But I'd been his primary victim, the analyst who did the best work, who trusted him completely, who never pushed back or demanded recognition. The strategy that had earned him a promotion wasn't just flawed. It was stolen. And the metadata proved it beyond any doubt. Every slide, created by Nathan Cole. Every analysis, authored by Nathan Cole. Every interview, conducted by Nathan Cole. Every insight, documented first by Nathan Cole. The regulatory risk analysis I'd produced, dated May 27th, Marcus's promotion presentation to the board, June 18th, 3 weeks after I'd identified the flaw that would destroy the project. The external investigators asked me a question I'd been preparing for. Why didn't you come forward when Marcus presented your work as his own? I paused, letting genuine emotion show on my face. Emotion that wasn't hard to summon because it was real. I was in shock. I trusted him. I'd given him everything, thinking he was going to help me present it to Richard. And then I watched him take it and erase me from my own work. My voice cracked slightly. Honestly, I thought if I accused a popular manager of plagiarism right after he'd been promoted, who would believe me? I'm just an analyst. He was the new VP being celebrated by the entire company. The investigator nodded sympathetically. And when did you realize there was a regulatory issue? I documented it on May 27th, before Marcus ever presented the strategy. I was still validating my findings and planning to update the analysis with solutions before presenting to senior leadership. But Marcus moved forward with the presentation before I could complete that work. Did you try to warn him about the regulatory issue? This was the critical moment. The moment where I could have lied, could have claimed I'd explicitly told Marcus about the flaw and he'd ignored me. But I didn't need to lie. I created a detailed analysis document dated May 27th, I said carefully. That document was part of my research files. Whether Marcus reviewed all the research files before claiming them as his own work, I can't speak to that. It was perfect. I wasn't claiming I'd warned him. I was simply pointing out that any competent researcher would have found my analysis document if they'd actually done the research instead of stealing the presentation. The question became, did Marcus steal work he didn't understand, or did Marcus ignore warnings about work he did understand? Either way, he was destroyed. The investigation concluded on October 24th. The findings were devastating. Marcus Webb was terminated for cause, theft of intellectual property, negligent management, and deliberately dismissing critical risk warnings from multiple team members. No severance. No recommendations. His reputation in the industry destroyed. His LinkedIn profile went quiet. His Tesla disappeared from the parking garage. The woman from marketing stopped answering his calls. The company had to pay breach of contract penalties to the medical practices, $1.9 million in total. The healthcare compliance project was shelved indefinitely. But here's where the story gets really good. November 3rd, Richard Halloway called me into his office. Not the office where I'd watched Marcus gloat. Richard's office, the corner suite on the top floor with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that made you feel like you owned the city. "Nathan, I owe you an apology," he said without preamble. "We failed you. Marcus abused his position, stole your work, and put this company at significant risk. I should have paid closer attention. I should have asked more questions." I nodded graciously, saying nothing. "I want to make this right. We're restructuring the strategy division. I'd like to offer you the VP of Strategic Innovation role, the position Marcus held. Same compensation package, including the $50,000 innovation bonus that should have been yours in the first place." I let the moment breathe. Let him think I was considering it. Let him worry that maybe I was going to reject it, maybe sue, maybe walk away and take my talents to a competitor. "I appreciate that, Richard. But I have a counteroffer." His eyebrows raised. "I'm listening. The healthcare compliance project isn't dead, it just needs to be rebuilt with proper regulatory compliance. I've spent the last month developing an adapted strategy that addresses all the October requirements." I pulled out my tablet, showing him my revised presentation. "It'll take an additional 6 months of development and push our launch to Q2, but the market opportunity is still there. Actually, it's bigger now, our competitors abandon the market, so we have a clear path if we do this right." Richard studied my presentation for a long moment, scrolling through pages of analysis that I developed during those long nights when I was supposed to be grieving my stolen future. "You've had this ready the whole time, haven't you?" "I believe in doing thorough research, sir. All of it. Not just the convenient parts." He smiled. A real smile, not the corporate mask. "Deal. When can you start?" "I already have." April 2024. We launched the TechVault Healthcare Compliance Suite with 12 beta medical practices, including some of the same practices that had canceled their contracts after the October crisis. They remembered Marcus's failure, but they trusted my solution because I'd personally walked them through every regulatory requirement, every protection measure, every failsafe. Within 3 months, we had 87 customers. Within 6 months, we generated $4.3 million in new revenue, blowing past the original projections from my stolen presentation. The strategy that Marcus had stolen and botched became the foundation for my legitimate success. Industry publications wrote articles about TechVault's remarkable recovery in the healthcare market. I was invited to speak at conferences. I moved out of my apartment with the water-stained ceiling. Bought a house. Nothing crazy, but it had a home office with space for a proper desk and windows that actually opened. Got my student loans under control. Finally bought a car that didn't make concerning noises. But the revenge wasn't complete until I got a LinkedIn message in May. From Marcus. The notification appeared on my phone while I was in a meeting with Richard, reviewing Q3 projections. I almost laughed out loud. Marcus Webb. "Hi Nathan, I hope this message finds you well. I've been doing a lot of reflection over the past few months and working on personal growth. I'm currently exploring new opportunities in the analytics and strategy space. I know we didn't part on the best terms, but I've always respected your analytical abilities. Would you be open to a brief call to discuss the market landscape and whether you know of any opportunities that might be a good fit? I'm flexible on role level and compensation at this point, just looking for the right opportunity to contribute. Best, Marcus." I stared at that message for a long time. He'd been unemployed for 7 months. His industry reputation was ruined, word travels fast in our sector, and fired for stealing credit isn't something you recover from easily. He was reaching out to the person he'd betrayed, asking for help finding not a management role, not an executive position. Any opportunity. Any role level. He was begging the analyst he'd tried to erase for scraps from my table. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Let him suffer in silence. Block him and move on with my life. But there was a better way to end this. I replied 3 days later, long enough to make him check his messages obsessively, hoping for a response. "Marcus, I appreciate you reaching out. I'm always willing to help talented people find the right opportunities. I'd be happy to have a conversation about your career goals and see if there's a fit somewhere in the market. Let me know when you're available for a call. Professional. Gracious. The kind of response a VP would give to someone reaching out for career advice. Offering help to the man who tried to destroy me. We had that call. I listened to him fumble through explanations of his learning experiences and personal growth journey. I asked thoughtful questions about what he was looking for. I took notes like I was genuinely trying to help. I really appreciate this, Nathan, he said at the end, his voice thick with something that might have been shame or might have been desperation. I know I made mistakes at TechVault. I've learned a lot about leadership and giving credit where it's due. We all make mistakes, I said generously. The important thing is learning from them. If you hear of anything, any opportunity at all, I'd really appreciate you keeping me in mind. Of course, I said. I'll let you know if something comes up. And then I never contacted him again. Not out of cruelty, not out of spite. Because the most devastating thing I could do wasn't to keep him from finding a job. It was to let him know that I had the power to help him, that I was now in a position to throw him a lifeline, that one word from me could change his situation. And that I was choosing not to. Every time he checked his LinkedIn messages, hoping for a response from me, he'd remember that I held his career in my hands the same way he'd once held mine. And he'd remember what he'd chosen to do with that power. And what I'd chosen to do with mine. Some victories look quiet from the outside. No screaming matches. No public shaming. No explosive confrontations in front of the whole company. Just a stolen presentation with a fatal flaw. Just patience. Just letting a thief destroy himself with the very weapon he'd stolen. Marcus took my work because he thought I was too weak, too naive, too powerless to stop him. He thought that being charismatic and well-connected would always triumph over being competent and ethical. He thought the game was about who could take credit the fastest. He didn't realize the game was about who actually understood the work. I didn't defeat Marcus. I gave him exactly what he wanted, my work, my research, my career opportunity. I let him take it all. And I let him discover that stolen goods sometimes come with hidden consequences. The board meeting where he was suspended? I have the recording saved on my laptop. Sometimes, when I'm having a hard day, when imposter syndrome creeps in, when I wonder if I really deserve the success I've built, I replay it. Not out of spite, well, maybe a little spite, but as a reminder. Trust is fragile. Reputation is built over years and destroyed in minutes. And the most elegant revenge isn't the one that requires force or lies or becoming someone you're not. It's the one where you simply step aside and let karma use the very knife your enemy sharpened. Marcus wanted my success. He stole my presentation, my research, my future. He got my trap instead. And I got everything he thought he could take from me. I'm sitting in my office now, my corner office, with my nameplate on the door and my name in the slide footers. I'm about to head into a board meeting where I'll present Q3 results and preview our Q4 strategy. My strategy. My research. My name. Last week, a junior analyst on my team came to me with a brilliant idea for expanding into the dental practice market. She was nervous, excited, hoping I'd help her present it to senior leadership. I listened to her entire pitch, asked questions, gave her feedback, and then I helped her schedule a meeting with Richard so she could present it herself. Because I remember what it's like to trust your manager. I remember what it's like to hand someone your future and hope they'll protect it. I remember the difference between leaders who lift people up and leaders who climb on their backs. If you've ever had someone take credit for your work, if you've ever felt powerless while watching a thief get rewarded for your effort, if you've ever been told that hard work doesn't matter as much as politics, remember this story. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't confrontation. It's preparation. And patience. And being smart enough to know that the truth, delivered at exactly the right moment, is more devastating than any lie. Marcus thought he'd stolen my future. He just borrowed it long enough to destroy his own. If you've been betrayed in the workplace, hit subscribe. Because justice doesn't always look like a Hollywood ending. Sometimes it looks like a timestamp on a file that proves someone's entire career was a lie. Some lessons are expensive. Marcus's cost him everything. Mine taught me exactly what I was worth.